Hey, it's Jason Markusoff filling in for Jamie. For more than a decade, Nigel Farage has been one of the most influential people in British politics.
Dare to dream that the dawn is breaking on an independent, united kingdom.
I mean, what's not to like? I know you're going to miss us. I know you want to ban our national flags, but we're going to wave you goodbye. And we'll look forward in the future.
And until recently, it seemed quite possible that his right-wing populist party, Reform UK, could win the next election. Then, a new Labour Prime Minister and a string of scandals threw a wrench in those plans.
Did Nigel Farage break parliamentary rules by accepting a £5 million gift from a Thailand-based crypto billionaire and not declaring it?
3 months of headlines around this £5 million gift later, and for Nigel Farage's opponents, it continues to be the gift that keeps on giving.
In the wake of that, Nigel Farage resigned from Parliament and right away announced he would run again in the by-election.
No, I've decided that the people of Clacton should be the judges of my actions. This will be a people versus the establishment by-election.
Farage is almost guaranteed to win Thursday's vote. None of the other major parties are running candidates against him. And his main opponent is an independent who wears a garbage can on his head and goes by Count Binface. But polls suggest his chances of ending up as the next British Prime Minister may be waning. Today, did Nigel Farage miss his moment? Sam Blewett with Politico isn't so sure. He's here with me now to explain why, despite everything, it's hard to count Nigel Farage out. Hi, Sam. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jason. Good to be here.
So I want to get into this by-election and Nigel Farage's political future. But first, so for Canadians who may have not been following Nigel Farage's career too closely, how would you characterize his approach to politics?
Yeah, look, I mean, Nigel Farage, I think he comes across to most voters as a bit of an everyman, you know? He's the sort of pint-swilling, cigarette-smoking sort of man of the people.
Well, I'm now in the Cherry Tree in Little Oakley, and it's a pint, and it's a penny off because of the budget, and this is saving me £1 a week.
Lunching today?
I don't know whether we've got time, actually. We'll probably just have
After 5. Yes.
But I might have a beer, you know.
There's a certain proportion of the public who just loves him. He feels that they speak his language, and he really does. He cuts through much more than the more mainstream rivals. Particularly recently, we had Keir Starmer, seen as the archetypal wooden kind of politician. He's been swept away now. We've got Andy Burnham, who's a bit more of a rival on the sort of plain speaking front. But Nigel Farage really has been the politician who's been sort of mastering that for the last decade or so.
And we're talking about somebody who has had a very, very long career in politics. He was a founding member of the UK Independence Party, or UKIP, back in 1993, and later its leader.
What started as a murmur in the pubs and clubs and wherever people congregate in this country is now beginning to reach a crescendo roar. And what people are saying is, get Britain out.
He was a member of the European Parliament for 21 years.
You have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. I would like to ask you, President, who voted for you?
And his goal during that whole time was for the UK to leave the European Union. He gets that wish with Brexit in 2016.
Let June the 23rd go down in our history as our Independence Day.
And so, Sam, what becomes his political raison d'etre after that?
Yeah, actually, you know, that could have been a moment that he sort of slipped into a nice retirement, right? You know, he achieved his main aim.
During the referendum campaign, I said, I want my country back. And what I'm saying today is I want my life back. And it begins right now. Thank you.
And then actually came the pandemic, and he started this Reform Party, which for a while, it was a bit anti-lockdown. It was a bit kind of a bit of a libertarian kind of front against some of the sort of draconian measures people were feeling. But, you know, as the pandemic swept away, it kind of kept that that outsider status and built it quite a bit of headway, sort of like polling low digits for a while, but having its voice heard on the outsider politics. And then until the 2024 general election, the last one just gone, Nigel Farage decided to step back into the front of frontline politics and lead the party once more. And he really took politics by storm at that point.
Well, guess who's back? Back again.
Now, he only did so well in that general election. He himself actually got elected as an MP for the first time.
Farage Nigel Paul, Reform UK, 21,225.
That was his 8th time of trying. So, he, as popular as he is, he certainly does have his critics. But yeah, so him and about 4 or 5 others, they enter Parliament. From there on, he has gone from strength to strength. In the May local elections, managed to take control of a whole swathe of English county councils and local councils. So that gave him a real foothold in politics. And just to look at the national polling, his Reform Party has way outpolled the Labour Party for the last year or so. He's nudged the establishment Conservative Party into third. That's the other right-wing party. And just until today, our Apollo polls for the first time have Labour in front by 1 percentage point. But really, that's after about 18 months of Reform being sky high and, number one in the race to be the next Prime Minister.
So he started with Brexit being his big animating cause. It seems like since then, immigration has taken the forefront of his political rhetoric. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, totally. But these two things have always been very closely intertwined, right? I think the successful message in the 2016 Brexit referendum was take back control. And that meant largely take back control of our borders. To be a member of the European Union, you accept freedom of movement. So, people from across Europe could come live here. Now, a lot of people felt that led to too high levels of immigration into Britain. So, I think front and centre of Brexit was immigration.
Immigration is the number one issue in British politics. It has been for some years. The opinion polls are astonishing. 77% of the British public want cuts to the numbers coming into Britain, and over half the voters want a reduction to near zero. The only way we get control is to vote to leave the European Union. And I think William Hague...
And, actually, Brexit didn't deliver the low levels of migration that some people hoped it would. The pandemic was one main issue why that led to a large-scale sort of freezing of movement of people, right? Well, the government at the time, under Boris Johnson, the Conservative, decided they needed to get people in quick. And they really opened the doors to immigrants from across the world to come and prop up certain ailing sectors. And that caused a really big influx, which has helped drive some of this, drive immigration back up the agenda. And same with the small boats crisis. So we've got hundreds of people coming across the channel every day in dinghies.
The number of migrants crossing the channel to the UK in small boats has risen by more than 40%. It's putting increasing pressure on the government, which promised to smash the gangs organising the dangerous journeys.
For a long time, I think that at least one area of discussion around it was a humanitarian one. I think there was a great deal of sympathy from subsections of the public towards these people. But I think over time, opinion has hardened and they feel, again, I think the general sense is a lack of control. So that's really pushed this migration debate back up to the very top of the agenda, where it has been for quite some time.
Farage isn't without his own controversies. I was reading this Guardian article with the headline, "An Almost Comprehensive Guide to Nigel Farage's Many Scandals." Got racism and corruption allegations over time, backroom deals.
Yes.
Other than, Sam, the financial scandal he's currently engulfed with, are there any of those scandals or controversies that stand out to you to define him?
Look, there has been plenty of allegations over the past, but generally, I think people have, or at least a certain swathe of the electorate, have taken a look at those and thought, actually, he's still our guy. He's had these high or very divisive personal polling levels, right? Some members of the public, he's their ride or die. They love him and they'll vote for him come what may. I think what's more interesting is how they affect the sort of hovering middle that he would need to become Prime Minister.
So 2024, he finally wins a seat. Reform UK gets a foothold in Parliament. And then fast forward to May of last year, they're riding high in national polls, Reform is, and they win hundreds of local council seats, absolutely decimating Labour and the Conservatives. How unstoppable did Nigel Farage appear at that point?
Yeah, I think, he really seemed like not the Prime Minister in waiting. That would be too much to say. There was still a long way to go and plenty of reasons for him to potentially trip up. But yeah, he seemed like the favourite. Businesses started to court him and his party. They started to panic, really, and think, actually, if this guy really does get into government, well, we've done no outreach to him. We need to know how to contact him and his people in order to have a bit of influence. I think the media started treating him a bit more like, yeah, he could be the next Prime Minister, or at least he's a really serious contender for it now. But yeah, I think, there's always been reasons to suspect that it would be a much more difficult journey to number 10 than that.
Was it the decline of Labour and Conservative politics or people's faith in them that propelled him, or was it Nigel Farage himself propelling himself upwards over those parties?
Yeah, I think both have worked in tandem, right? We had the Conservatives in charge here for 14 years. There was a long period of austerity, and they kept winning elections in part because the opposition was all pretty unpopular. Labour finally won back Parliament. Keir Starmer becomes Prime Minister, but turns out they just voted him in to get rid of the Conservatives. So yeah, on the back of that laid really ripe territory for Nigel Farage to come in and use his very populist and popular rhetoric, whether it's about migration. It's almost in a bit of a sort of a drain the swamp kind of way of looking at Westminster, where most power sits in this country. And yeah, it was just that really fertile land for him to come in and capitalise on that.
So then he's at the peak of his powers, it seems, in May with these local council elections. And then in June, Starmer announces he's leaving as Prime Minister, and former Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham succeeds him.
We will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain, bringing forward the biggest changes in the last 40 years. A new political model and a new economic model.
That's the 7th PM for the UK since Brexit. How does all this play out for Farage?
Yeah, I think the second you see Keir Starmer announce his resignation, you can track Labour's polling just start going upwards. Keir Starmer just couldn't connect with the voters. He was deeply unpopular. His allies and those who are still fond of him can't entirely see why. I mean, they'd say he's not a particularly bad chap, to be honest. A pretty average guy who rose to the top of politics from a pretty humble background. But, he just couldn't connect with voters and he couldn't read the room of the nation. As soon as he announced his resignation, Labour's polling starts tracking up, and that's only continued going upwards as Andy Burnham has taken over. Though, let's just put it this way, I think, there's every reason to think that Andy Burnham is going to have a really difficult ride ahead of him as well.
But how do you see Farage adjusting to going up against Andy Burnham?
The last week or so, he has again returned to the topic of migration.
They tried offshore processing. They tried a number of things, and in the end what worked was towing the boats back to Indonesia. And since then, hardly a boat has landed in Australia. I am entirely confident that under a Reform government, within a fortnight, there would be no more boats.
It's all sort of entwined with our very poor justice system at the moment. The prisons for a long time have been very close to breaking point. The Labour government had to make a really difficult decision of letting prisoners out early just so that they could continue locking up new prisoners. I mean, things are really that dire. So Nigel Farage, he's quite cleverly trying to twin that problem with many voters' fears about immigration. So he came out with a big pitch earlier this week, talking about deporting all foreign national offenders.
We send people back to their country of origin. So it needs a phone call with Edi Rama from Albania, etc. And if they refuse, we then send foreign national offenders off to third parties.
So he's come out with this very populist, sort of quite hard right appeal to voters over migration, and he'll keep doing it. I mean, it's summer, so in summer times when the weather is calmer, the winds aren't blowing quite as hard, that's when we see real numbers of small boats making unauthorized trips with asylum seekers and other migrants across the channel. So yeah, I think he sees real fertile ground to sort of try and recapture the narrative both on migration and our sort of ailing state as well. And he'll keep trying to ram that home, I'm sure.
So I know here in Canada, having policies that can be cast as Trumpy is like kryptonite for politicians. How does that sort of Trumpiness of what Farage does play to voters there?
It plays in two ways. So I think to those who are trying to like Farage, actually it's not such a bad thing, because one thing that goes with Trumpiness, I suppose, is an ability to get things done, to ram things through, no matter what the costs. And actually, that can be quite a popular process for all of its the blowback that it can cause. But yeah, I think then to probably a larger swathe of the public, they're quite turned off by his sort of Trump-like attitude to things. And also his relationship with Trump as well. You know, he's sort of part of this global network of nationalists who can get on incredibly well and can support each other and can come up against each other at times. But those pictures of Farage in the gold lift with Trump after, I think it was Trump's first election, they do come back to haunt Farage quite somewhat, I think.
Sam, we've alluded to it, but I do want to bring up those financial scandals, bring them in here. The Guardian first reported in April that Farage was given a £5 million gift by a Thai-based crypto billionaire that he didn't disclose, potentially in breach of parliamentary rules. It's under investigation, I understand. Then the Sunday Times reveals that a convicted crypto gambler nicknamed Posh George has been financing Farage's lifestyle. What reason has Farage given for why he was given this money?
I think varying reasons, actually. First, it was security.
I've been the most attacked physically politician of modern times. This money is the only way I can look after myself and protect myself for the rest of my life.
The rules are clear, though, aren't they?
The rules are very, very clear. And believe you me, we've looked at this from every legal angle. There is no obligation to declare something that is an unconditional, non-political, personal gift.
Now, it's quite an understandable explanation in a way, because politics here, like in many countries at the moment, is quite a perilous place to be. We have really sadly actually seen a frontline sort of retired Conservative and current Reform politician actually killed in her home recently.
Devon and Cornwall police said Ms Widdicombe was found at her home with serious injuries. Anne Widdicombe was 78 and a major figure in the Conservative governments of the 1990s. She joined Reform UK in 2023. Sir Keir Starmer...
As has MPs been killed in recent years. So it is dangerous, and that is one of the reasons he's given. But I'm not sure that entirely passes the sniff test. He's also given the reasons of it being a reward for Brexit, which, you know, a £5 million reward for sort of a moral crusade, as he previously saw it, I don't think went down particularly well. He's also just tried to outright deflect questions, saying it's not anyone's business.
It's an unconditional gift. I can spend it on Ferraris if I want. That'd be entirely up to me.
But my listeners want to know, Mr. Farage, how much has been spent?
With it. Nick, I can do with it as I want. I can do what I want with it. Well, I can put it on the horses.
Yes, you are under review.
So yeah, he's been pretty tetchy about all of this. He really isn't enjoying the scrutiny.
Is it a mistake not to declare the gifts from George Cottrell, sir?
You tell your bosses you harass my family anymore, and I'll take you with serious consequences. That's what your organisation...
He's been Teflon-y before with these scandals and controversies and deflecting them. Is this stuff sticking?
It feels like it's sticking somewhat of a moment. There's been a constant drumbeat of these allegations coming out and being expanded on every week. Something doesn't feel quite right to people. And even speaking to those people who do support him in his constituency of Clacton, and yeah, they are a bit sceptical about this and they're not particularly happy about it. I think the problem where it doesn't stick so well is actually people have, particularly his voters, have a very low opinion of politicians in general. they will typically tell you, well, they're all at it anyway, aren't they? Now, they'll rehearse various arguments against previous Labour and Conservative politicians, serving ones too, and they may be of different scales and gravity, some of these allegations, but it all kind of adds to a general stench around politics that certain voters feel. I think where it's more dangerous for Nigel Farage is the sort of extra 20% or 10% of the public, whatever it is he needs to actually become prime minister. I think that bunch who are more skeptical of him but might be minded to support him for a bit of a change, they're the ones that is really risky.
So he's chosen to ride this scandal in a novel way, perhaps. Farage announces he's resigning his seat.
Today, I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election, which would happen, I hope, in short order.
And then that he's going to run in a by-election to win that seat right back. He said he wanted to silence his critics, face off against the establishment.
It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment, to frankly tell them where to go.
But Sam, how did the so-called establishment respond to this?
Yeah, they decided to not turn up to his gambit, essentially. All of the rival mainstream parties took one look at this and thought his grounds for the election weren't really legitimate. I mean, also, they'd look at it and say he's bound to win here anyway, almost certainly. So they didn't really fancy fighting that contest on his grounds that they would say are phony, and that he should actually just face the scrutiny that being in Parliament affords him.
And so without any of the establishment parties running candidates, this by-election has really seemed to take a life of its own, particularly with the candidates who did choose to run against him. And most notably, there's his main opponent.
My name's Count Binface, intergalactic space warrior, leader of the Recyclons from planet Sigma 9, and part-time democratic politician on Earth.
Yeah, my name's Count Binface, and I've entered the race for Clacton's new MP.
Farage is a famously colorful figure, Sam, but can you paint us a picture of Count Binface and this by-election?
Yeah, it's pretty farcical, really, isn't it? Count Binface really has emerged as the main rival. Look, I think Britain has a long history of satirical candidates and joke candidates. Entry to run in any kind of election is pretty low. You just pay a £500 deposit, and for at least these candidates, it's not the biggest amount of money to lose for a bit of fun and publicity. So Binface is someone who runs in many, many elections. If you look at Andy Burnham's by-election up in Makerfield, actually, look at the stage that day. Andy Burnham is on the stage. To one side of him is Count Binface. To the other side of him is a man dressed as a fox. Now, that is quite common fodder for high-profile elections, and this one has followed it. But actually, this one has gone far further. If this election has the most candidates ever to run in one seat, when voters go to the ballot box on Thursday, they're going to be handed a polling paper which is nearly a metre long, and they're going to have to. But Nigel Farage's supporters are going to have to scan through all of that in order to pick out his name, look past these joke candidates, these strange outside figures, in order to find the only likely person who can become MP. So yeah, I think for good reason, a lot of voters around here do reckon it's descended into quite a farce.
It's always quite the scene. We don't have this in Canada, in Britain, and I love watching election night because it's not in Canada. You don't have every single candidate in that election all up on the same stage, and I do wonder how that might transform politics in Canada. These little by-elections, if that happened. But you're talking to us from Clacton right now. How do voters feel about this whole by-election?
Yeah, look, I think I've been, observing some focus groups, and the general message I'm picking up on, particularly, even from Reform voters and people who are minded to vote Nigel Farage again, is that actually this seaside town has been made to look a bit of a laughingstock, in their words, about this. See Binface on the telly. Every time Clacton by-election is mentioned on national telly, broadcasting rules mean they have to read out all 34 candidates. Clacton is now seen in a bit of a joke light, and people are really feeling that, and I don't think they appreciate it. Even some of his supporters are holding him a bit responsible for this. They'll still vote for him, most of them, but you do wonder whether it's been sowing the seeds of some dissatisfaction for the future.
All that said, it's not at all expected that he's going to lose this by-election. So Farage will win likely on Thursday, be heading back to Westminster. What happens after that?
Yeah, the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner investigation will resume into him. The scrutiny from newspapers and journalists will continue. He will continue to go on a bit of a warpath against his critics and the media. But what it boils down to, I think, is whether the stench of this sticks with him and what the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner comes back with. It's quite possible that the Standards Commissioner finds he has committed some kind of wrong by not disclosing these large-scale donations, and potentially there's more to come that we don't know about yet. And he has to face another by-election with even more of this behind him. I think that's one worry. He may well win that one again, but I think it's the bigger worry is how this affects him nationally, whether this starts to dent his national polling and reduce his chances of becoming the next prime minister just as Labour starts to resurge somewhat.
Yeah, that's right. Labour is on the upswings. And meanwhile, Farage himself is reaching, seems like, new lows or recent lows in approval ratings. A recent Ipsos poll says 61% of Brits are dissatisfied with him versus only 23% satisfied. And that lead, like you say, is gone. So after coming so close to the top of things, do you think Nigel Farage's moment has passed him by?
I think it's far too early to say that. I mean, he's a very wily operator with, sure, a smaller approval rating at the moment, but still a pretty big diehard swathe of the public who will back him come what may. So no, I think he's got a long way to go if he really wants to, and I think there's every indication of that at the moment. So yeah, I expect him to keep on swinging and taking it to the government.
Yeah, I guess 3 years is a long way before an election. So much can happen, but with Farage, I hear commentators call him the Marmite politician, named after that salty yeast spread in a jar. Either you love it or it revolts you. And that's how people compare Farage. Can you see someone that polarizing still one day becoming prime minister, Sam?
Yeah, you're right. It is hard to see that, but such are the levels of dissatisfaction in the status quo here in Britain. It's not impossible. I don't think it's as reckless as people voting, someone come what may, despite their flaws, but they're looking at the alternatives and they see the Conservatives who they think failed them for some time and created the problem we're in. They look at Labour and at the moment are saying, I don't think they've done enough to turn this around. Then there's the whole global backdrop of terrible economic times battering us as a country. And you know what? They might just roll the dice and think Farage might just be the sort of the medicine that we need to fix this country. But yeah, you're right. I think, someone that divisive, it is still hard to see.
Sam, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again.
Okay, legend. Thank you so much for that.
That's all for today. I'm Jason Markusoff. Thanks for listening to Front Burner.